Hello there. Today we've got another great episode. Today we have Jason Weible, who has 15 years in live event experience. He has been working to bring the gaming industry's kind of knowledge around VR and AR into the event space. And I think we're going to have a really great talk about where things are and where they're going with regards to those products and potential products that are coming on and how digital events can actually stand out versus the easy kind of character 8-bit graphic meetings that I feel like we're doing a lot of right now. So with that, please join me in welcoming Jason.
Thanks, Joe. It's actually Weeble. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you for at least getting my name right. You're one of few people that actually have. So thanks for doing that.
Oh my God, my heart dropped.
Did that purposely. Purposely just to see what kind of reaction I'd get.
I almost cried. Oh goodness. Well, now that I can breathe again, thank you so much for joining us. And I want to briefly go over. We've been able to speak a few times now, and I think what you said in one of the early conversations was that you saw what the gaming industry was doing, and you saw the potential there. Could you maybe just give a 1 minute kind of recap of what you saw and why you thought it was going that way?
Sure. I saw the gaming industry pre-pandemic, right? There was a renderer that we did a lot of work with that did their drawings with the gaming engine that we'll talk more about later. And as we were having conversations, again, this was pre-pandemic, they started speaking French to me because I was asking them like what they built everything in. And I found out that at the time, they filled their gaps as game designers and were taking all the trade shows that we built this very beta version of a trade show floor. And they at that time they literally handed me a joystick, if joysticks are still a thing, and they said, go ahead and maneuver yourself through the trade show floor. And so I walked around there, and again, this was, pre-pandemic, and drove home and went. That was really one of the coolest things that I had seen. I don't know how people are going to divide their spend to be able to do it. And I have to have a really big client who's going to jump on and do that. Right. And now I'm designing my business around it. So, yeah, I seeing something like that, I really think um, sparked the light bulb when the pandemic happened, right? As a matter of fact, I remember, March 16th, when we were down in Florida and everything was closing down around us, and I was like, oh, the light bulb came on, and I said, hey, I need to reach out to those guys now. And um, I reached out to those guys and reached out beyond that. I started reaching out to a lot of different game developers and people in the film and production industry who had been using the game development tool, and really kind of put together a round table of just experts who knew way more than I did at the time, to just start learning from them, and growing a database of different people who know it, that we could tap into.
Awesome. Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of knowledge out there. We've spoken previously about Matt Workman and what he's doing with everything down
Yeah,
to cheap controllers, relatively cheap, to capture motion on cameras that he's using with a green screen. To you know, three years ago maybe we were at the local hackerspace, taking an Xbox Connect and tracking people as we kind of rendered them in 3D roughly, and then used Ninja Flex to print them out in rubbery forms. We could kind of thump their heads, right? So I think we've come a long way since then. But the fact that 3 years ago we could scan somebody with technology that was probably 6, 8 years old at that point, the Connect
yeah.
device, I think there's a lot of opportunity to grow really quickly with a few exceptions of stumbling blocks that I hope we'll talk about today with proprietary or semi-proprietary technology. But yeah, I mean, If you don't mind, I would love to start with the opera that you showed me.
Yeah.
And maybe we can just go over this video for anyone who's watching. There will not be audio. There was audio because it's an opera, but I don't want to get a copyright strike, so you won't hear that. But we'll leave a link to that video so that you can watch it later.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so we actually one of the first clients that I was introduced to during the pandemic, they came to us and the problem was is that they, like a lot of different festivals, had to be shut down and they needed an opportunity to figure out how they were going to make their event virtual. And I told them a little bit about what we were working on, and they were like, wow, we can really take this wherever we want to go, right? And we were like, yeah, absolutely. You could take it to space. And she was like, perfect, that's it. So they wanted to do Tosca as if it was a futuristic production. Um, so they teamed this up. Actually, this is actually it became a really big hybrid event last year, I think it was June. But it was really when the kind of drive-in fad was happening again. And they combined this video with a live actor on stage, and they both sang together. This is actually, if I could sing, we would be doing exactly what they were doing right there. In that, it was muted, and the actor on stage was synced up with it and playing along, mimicking the actions. And the reason that we were able to do that was a technology called volumetric capture, which essentially, as I like to try to describe it, it's about 120 cameras. In this case, it was 32 because it was a little lower budget because it was a non-for-profit, that cut your movements into data and create a 3D holographic object of you, or whatever object that you're scanning. But in this case, it was this actor. And then from that point, you can take that and drop them into a game environment, which is what we did here.
And that can be done in real time.
No, it cannot be done. And the volumetric capture cannot be done in real time yet. I think that's what's really, really fascinating about this technology, is that the volumetric capture was originally designed to be a live capture tool, right? And what the people who adopted this technology were game designers and the film and movie production audience, right? And they said, this is really great technology. We love what you can do with it. I don't really need it to be live, but I need it to be really stellar quality because we do everything in post production.
Yeah.
Now I said yet, right? So due to the pandemic, right, and really before that, um, it has just kind of accelerated the use of moving this back to live. I'm supposed to have a conversation in Q2 with a company that is using volumetric capture, and they showed me a live performance that they did in a real time game environment. It was a little grainy right now, and that's why they held me off to Q2 because they said, I think we'll be able to get the kinks out by then. Come back, and we want to show it to you. So yeah, we did this, and we were actually working on a virtual concert prototype. While a lot of the people that we had seen out there were creating avatars and creating virtual experiences in front of a green screen and pulling that in. We wanted something that was a little bit more three-dimensional and interactive, and we used volumetric capture. As you can imagine, the price tag on it is not that not that budget friendly right now. And so I kind of feel like that interactive component of it, we were a little bit ahead and behind the times, and we're hoping to keep our eye on it. And as the live function of it evolves a little bit, start putting that back in front of investors.
And as a stopgap, I guess is the best way to put it.
Hmm.
opportunity, you could with a green screen set up multiple angles and have them keyed separately, right? If you had established shots, I mean that's been kind of a practice.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, you can do that with. I've seen it done with green screen. Um, I mean, the Weather Channel. We'll talk more about the Weather Channel later, but that's kind of what they do is they map out the storytelling that they're going to put the person in front of a green screen and then create AR elements around it using the gaming technology.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Or was it ESPN's dropping in holograms now or something, right?
Oh, I was gonna say ESPN is doing really cool, fun stuff with Nickelodeon and having the slime zone for kids at the Super Bowl and all kinds of fun stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
So the the end goal should be to make it live, a live
yeah,
performer in a virtual space. And I guess one of the big volumetric, though you pointed out they're not the only one. One of the big license companies is Microsoft,
right.
and my understanding is that they've been fairly unaffordable for smaller productions. And so I wonder if that's going to change now that the big announcement with Mesh at Ignite last week, if that's going to kind of drive their prices down or change their model at all. Do you have
I
any
don't,
thoughts on that?
yeah, I don't know if it's going to change the model of the volumetric capture component of it, but I do think that it is going to change the evolution of how we are doing events. I mean, Microsoft has a lot to gain and very little to lose in this technology. Now that they bought Altverse VR or acquired that company, and now that people have really experienced Microsoft Teams in the pandemic, right?
Yeah,
The ability to tie that technology to Microsoft Teams, to tie that technology to Office 365, and then to be able to make it one huge collaborative tool. Like, I mean, they can start really. If there's anything that becomes the driver, it's because of those products that they have combining and the ability to reach a larger market because of that versus just the technology of volumetric capture coming down.
yeah. I mean that's a great point. I'm looking at this video from from one of their presentations. And one thing that strikes me is one, their HoloLens is about $3,500 right now. So
Right.
it's not really affordable to have you know a 500 person conference unless somebody wants to really invest and rent those heavily. Um, but the other thing, and I think we've spoken about this, is what this video shows is someone who's actually got some eyebrow gestures and eyelid movement and things that actually are these nonverbal cues. And I think you need something like volumetric or some other tool to really facilitate capturing and displaying that. Is that kind of a
Yep.
fair assessment?
Yeah, that is a fair assessment. And, I mean, I think that there's going to be a lot of tie-ins into facial recognition tools. I mean, you're already starting to see it in the newer versions of the iPhone
Yeah.
that are going to be started to be implemented into these devices that you're going to get a lot of that fluidity and facial recognition. I mean, just the fact that the new iPhone has LiDAR built into it is a huge game changer. I was just at the Field Museum last week, just because there's a project that we're working on, and I was literally able to take my iPhone and do a scan of the megalodon jaw structure and have it turn out fairly fairly like spot on. Like, I was meeting with a real LiDAR company as opposed to using my phone, right, to get an estimate. And I showed him that and he was like, yeah, that's pretty good,
Huh.
So yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I said, just the fact that it's starting to be built into our phone right now, you know?
Yeah, I actually bought a iPad Pro for the same feature. The fact that you can have LiDAR and that quality of camera so that you not only capture the depth and some of that
Yeah.
information, but you also capture the color and kind of those spatial components that we as humans need. Um, man, it's getting so close, right? Like to
Yeah.
actually bring someone into my living room, I could scan it with an iPad or a phone soon. It's just nuts.
Well, I mean, we were talking about it a little bit before too. I mean, just imagine that technology and going into a hotel ballroom, right? And being able to capture like the real depth of an event space, right? And just imagine what you can do with that as a virtual clone, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think the world of possibilities are really endless on what you can do with that.
I can hear Hilton and Hyatt right now saying we need to license our ballrooms. Their virtual images.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, but I mean, that brings up a good point because there will be at some point issues, concerns, or contracts regarding what space that you're in. I wonder how long before that happens. Um,
Yeah, like I was to say, I don't know. I mean, when I was working with some of the game developers, again, we were working on a concert project, right?
yeah.
And one of our clients wanted us to, they were like, well, maybe we can go in and scan Madison Square Garden, and maybe we can go in and, scan Soldier Field. And some of the developers that we were working with who had insight in the sporting industry, they had done stuff with Golden Tee and Madden, right? They were like, we do not want to go down that route, right? They were like, there's a ton of licensing issues that you have to go about,
Yeah.
just doing those types of things. Not to mention the musical side of it, right? Like we had a music licensing expert that was part of our team that she facilitates all the contracts for Beat Saber. And she also did like all the negotiation for Spotify. And she was telling us, she was like, YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, right now things are happening on that front that are being allowed to happen from a musical licensing standpoint during this time. But you watch over the next 3 5 years, you're going to see some clamping down on what can actually be used on those platforms, which is also why we muted the volume on the opera production of it
Exactly.
earlier, right? So yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you're already, I mean, right on Facebook and stuff, you're already starting to see it to a certain extent, and I mean, I think that's playing nice for right now, because people are, they're trying to find something to do. But once the world starts to open up a little bit, I think there's going to be a little bit more focus on those types of platforms and what we can and can't do in those
But
spaces.
but at that point, you could pay the artist to come in and perform, right? If it's not
But
recorded
it's
for
not just
redistribution or something.
but it's not just the artist, it's the label, the publisher, and all the other people that want to get a piece of the pie on that.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, kids at most universities, their student government can figure out how to bring rappers for outrageous prices. I'm sure an event can too.
Yeah.
But more importantly, it's what is that venue going to look like, and what is that experience going to be? One of the things from Mesh was at the end of Ignite, the last day, they had something that was kind of reminiscent of a playa at Burning Man or something, and there were some things there. Um, some of it was kind of it's not the direction I would have gone, but
Yeah.
it showed some opportunity. There were multiple people in the space, lots of people, and there were lots of things going on. How long do you think it is before we gain that kind of interaction? The ability that I have a 3D rendering of me that looks fairly well like me, just like the Microsoft person, um, and you do as well, and we can meet in some virtual space and have a conversation, or I can listen to your presentation, or whatever that may be.
Well, like I said, I mean, Microsoft Mesh, that whole conversation, I think, is really going to accelerate some of that. I think the technologies are already, out there and starting to be played on. It's just the adoption component of it, right? So it's getting people to go. I mean, heck, I mean, look at green screens, right? I'm just going to use that as an example right now. Like, how long has the green screen been around? You know, as long as
Yeah.
I can think, right? But how many people have adopted the green screen use, during this last year, right? Like, to the point that sometimes I kind of feel like it's overused, like,
It's
so
definitely overused.
you know, but that technology has been out there. It was just a motivator to get people to use it, right? And so, and I really, that's kind of really been about the story of a lot of these virtual things, is that they've all been sitting out there, and it's now the motivating factor to get people to jump on and use them. um, but that's all that it takes too, I think, is getting the people into the door to start playing with them and starting to realize the the possibilities and the positivity behind those tools.
Well,
um, and oh, go ahead.
well, I was going to say, you're right on the positivity, but when you're talking about those tools, we spoke about the opera and the level of tooling needed and cameras, and it may soon be able to be done in real time on a stage, in a proper space. How far out do you think we are from at least some bad version of that same thing happening in the ballroom where somebody's watching it live?
I mean, I mean, we're actually trying to present that to our clients now. We've been working with some of the production companies that we've been speaking to, and some of the larger production houses that have adopted some of the XR stages, which we haven't talked about yet, but some of the XR stages. And really the learning, I was going to say, the one of the biggest holdbacks on that were the people who understood how to build and develop the content, right?
Yeah.
And and what was satisfying to me today, before we jumped on, I was watching a webinar by NYU Media School, and Epic Unreal Engine was on there, and they showed student projects that they had been working on, and they were amazing, right? It looked like they had been playing on it for years, and the fact that Epic is or Unreal is a free platform,
Yeah.
right? The fact that more people are adopting it, the fact that Unreal is buying out, all these development and plugin tools and just expanding on it. Um, when the curriculums when the pandemic started and we were starting to build out the concert platform, I called Full Sail up and I said, hey, I need somebody who understands game design. I need somebody that understands film production. And I need somebody who understands live production. I need those three things, which are all things that you teach at your school, but I need one person that can like pull them all together. Do you have anybody, in your, is there, number one, is there any curriculum that you're teaching that pulls all those together? And is there anybody that you can point me to within there that might point me to people who know all those functions? And they were like, no. And no, and we are really starting to understand the necessity for that type of collaborative um, conversation, and we are trying to figure out ways to adapt that into our curriculum for next year. I haven't spoken to them since that conversation, but I know what Epic is doing from some of their fellowships and grants and training programs right now. um, I I can't imagine that they're not taking that component of it on. So the more people who start to adopt this technology, the easier and sooner I think we're going to start to see it adopted as something that's a little bit more main-place.
Yeah. So having educated people on the bottom end working up obviously helps. On the other end, you've got $3,500 for HoloLens, but there are other options that are cheaper, right? Oculus from Facebook is fairly cheap, and
Yep.
and I know there are a few others out there. what what would you say are going to be the kind of the requirements going in? Because on the one end, I would love to see um, camera cameras miniaturized or their placement set up so that I could remote in or AR or VR in and watch somebody on stage from my house. That would be a phenomenal experience for me just to watch keynotes. Um, but how far are we from that? How far are we from everyone who can attend in person being able to afford those devices and actually attend virtually themselves?
Well, I mean, do they, I mean, I guess the question is, do they need to have those types of glasses to have that type of experience, right? I mean, a lot of the experiences that are immersive and do the same level of content grabbing, can all be done on your regular PC laptop, or on your phone. I mean, again, I think it's the level of what you want it to be, and we need to have that functionality and flexibility to be able to target your audience, right? I mean, like you said, there are there are different devices right now that are more affordable than others, right?
Yeah.
And and there are some that you have to sell your first and second child for it too, right? um it all goes back down to basics, and who is your audience, what is your budget, those type of targeted goals. And I think it's building those experiences around it. Like, if I have a demographic that's 55, 65 plus, what's the point of you know trying to put it onto to AR or VR goggles, right?
Yeah.
like 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 some of them are still learning how to use the iPad, so it's still targeting it to the right audience and building around that component of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's interesting. Gosh, what was it? I think it was the Google Glass. There was a commercial, and I'm sure they've pulled it down. But you know, they were showing off an experience, and maybe Apple was too. You would use maps or some similar feature, and you would go around and you would see the pub sign, and then you would see the rating information or whatever. Or there would be some interactive kiosk associated with that when you got approximately close to it in an AR environment. And I wonder if there's some way to fashion that as we go back and go into hybrid events. Could you fashion that in a way that the in-person attendee gets something in AR, whatever that sign is, or whatever
Yeah.
knowledge, whatever experience that is, and then the remote attendee, the digital attendee, gets to have that same sort of tidbit of information provided in VR too. Do you think
Yeah.
things like that are going to
No,
happen?
I don't know. I certainly hope so. Like I said, the technology is already there, right?
Yeah.
I had actually, there's a client that I used to do a ton of work with that I want to reach back out to, that I want to propose to them about having the unconference conference, right? Which is essentially like, let's have all the people that we want to attend on a smaller scale, right? Go to the hotel, right? But instead of sitting into a ballroom, we have different hot spots within the space that we play an AR video that's there. And as a group that are wearing the AR glasses, we have a small group that's watching the presentation, and they're all there that they can collectively speak and collaborate to, and it becomes almost kind of like a scavenger hunt of learning, right? That they go from place to place within the venue without actually sitting into the ballroom all day, right? And there's all the analytic. I mean, heck, we talk about the visual side, but there's all the analytics on the backside too, to trace whether they've done that activity, see if they've done it, who's done it, right? And how long they did it for, and capture all that data to make sure that they're really sucking in that content, which you can't
Yeah.
do by putting a person in the seats.
Yeah. That's so true. That is so true. Yeah. Gosh, it's so close. I can almost taste it. Yeah. I mean, and I think that's going to change, right? So people like me
Yeah.
who have done a lot in the AV side, and I've got a certified event design, um, and digital event strategist, and all these things that were really useful before, and I wonder how they're going to be useful in the future. And I think a lot of event planners and event owners are thinking through strategically what you mentioned it a minute ago. What are the things that we're going to need to learn next? Do we need to go to NYU and figure out what that class is, and how to really quickly ramp up? Or do you think there will
Yeah.
be people ready to take on those tasks?
I think it's going to be, I mean, heck, the pandemic's put us back, right? Like I I I was telling somebody before this call, I was going through all my contacts, and there was a trade show company that I wanted to reach out to, that I hadn't spoken to in 4 years, right? And I clicked on their website, and there was a big notice that, it was a family-owned business that said, hey, due to the pandemic, we're no longer there, right? And we're no longer a business. And I think because because me building my business and I'm so into this mind, I sometimes forget where we really are as the state of an industry,
Yeah,
right? And if you would have asked, I mean, your question when we were burning in 2020 is a totally different question than asking now, because some of the people that were working in our industry, you know, are working in other industries, and we don't know if those people are going to come back, right?
yeah, I
And so they're the people that are taking this time right now and learning new tools and picking up new, things in their tool belt that can be used for other things. And there are people that are gone, you know,
yeah,
and then there are a whole nother set of students that are at NYU that this is the new technology that they're learning. So, hopefully it's a combination of a lot of reinvention that we're seeing, students who are taught this, there's a big surge from a younger demographic that is going to help build this virtual landscape, and old veterans that know what live events are supposed to be like, that can help form those virtual ideas that the new youth that are bringing into it from a totally different perspective, and putting it into a tangible space that can be used now.
yeah. I mean, that's a great way to put it. So I guess to kind of put a nail in it. If you had to recommend three books for someone trying to wrap their head around this, or get started in it, what three books would you recommend?
I don't know that I have a book, but what I will say is that, and to be honest with you, because I don't know if there's really a lot of books that are being written,
Yeah,
that, like I said, I mean, Unreal Engine is still a fairly new technology. I think I have to take a look, but I think it's maybe even 5 years old, 5 to 10 years old, right?
yeah,
So I'll definitely say that between the 5 and 10 year old range. And so it's not like there's a dummy's guide to Unreal Engine. Here you go out and learn it, right? So, I feel like a lot of those books are being written right now. The best thing that I can say is find the people and the spaces that are playing with it. I dig into Facebook groups. There's a virtual production Facebook group that has a ton of people in it. Um, Reach out to find the companies, find the people that are doing it, and knock on those doors and say, hey, I want to learn about your technology. And right now is the best time to do it, because there is a lot of training materials and free right now
yeah,
that were normally, Disguise, I think, had um, a training tool that they were charging for, but before the pandemic, and now they're letting everybody kind of jump on and learn their tool, you know. And I
awesome.
think that's, like, aside from books, and I've actually thought about the idea of maybe the time is to find a ghostwriter and start writing a book right now, because I think it could be relevant, just in the same way that Jim Moody's concert lighting book was, when he was doing this stuff in the 70s became relevant in the 80s and 90s, and still kind of a textbook look at what the concert industry looks like, right? you
Yeah.
know we're in a new era, and there's a lot of people that have a lot of knowledge out there, and like anything, I think the best way to learn is just to tap their brains you know
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a great way to put it. So with that, I think we're going to wrap this up because we've probably gone longer than most of these. Uh, Thank you so much for sharing so much. And for all of those of you who are still watching, thank you for watching to the end. Please like and subscribe. Share this with someone if you think they might find it valuable. And join us again next Thursday for a new interview. And with that, have a great day.